Jennifer. Welcome back, everyone, and hello. Bruce left us with quite a challenge and I think something to really think about. But we shall not despair because we are artists, and there's art is going to save this world. So it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon, and having sat through all of the talks up until this point, it's been quite interesting listening to all of the people who have shared their expertise and their long years of service and their amazing credentials with us, because here I am. And when Jennifer asked me if I would give this talk on thinking like an artist, my husband Alan said, "Why did she ask you? That's not one of the things that you're known for." And indeed, it is not. I am not an artist. Never had an art class in my life. I don't do this professionally. I've never done this at all, except I guess I do. And so then what I want to ask all of you, how many of you drew as children? How many of you? Now look around this room, and every hand is up, right? Every hand is up. You drew as children. Crayoned, painted, and remember those years when a box of 64 Crayola crayons was the height of luxury. How many of you draw today? A few of you do, and thank goodness you do. And I hope what I have to share with you today, because you do draw today, will reinforce your good work and maybe expand it to other places. For those of you who don't draw anymore, if I have one objective to achieve this with you this morning, I hope that you will pick up a pen, a pencil, a paintbrush, and you will draw again. It's one of the best things you can do. For so many reasons. Art is going to do something that brings us back to our childhoods, in the sense that when you and I were young, the first gifts we gave anyone were drawings, don't you think? If you're a mom or a dad, your refrigerators are probably covered right now with things your own children gave you out of the joy of their heart, the joy of their expression, and their absolute love for you. And we don't do that as adults very much anymore, but we could and we should. So why don't we? So we'll talk thinking like an artist. So here's a drawing I did. I think you'll remember from my talk the other day, I was spending a lot of time at Dunwoody Seminary taking care of Father Joe while he was sick. And one day I looked out the window, and there are the towers of the seminary in Yonkers, New York. I thought, oh, that's marvelous. I think I'll draw that. Now, I don't draw, but I drew that. So let's look at drawing. We all start out drawing. And I imagine when you were little, your drawings looked like this. All our drawings looked like this. And they were expressions of absolute joy. Who wasn't proud of that work? Colorful, round suns, pointy mountains, all sorts of wonderful things. You draw like that to great joy and great approval when you're a little one. But something happens to our brains when we get a little bit older. We become aware of the ability to represent the world around us accurately or inaccurately. Some of us do it extremely well. Some of us can't do it very well. And of course, I am sure there are not art teachers anymore that exist that are like the one I have when I was in 7th grade. So yesterday I had a chance to meet Hutz and Lynn's daughter, Hailey. So Hailey is 13 years old, and she's about this high, these beautiful blonde hair, these big bright eyes, this mouth shining in this huge smile of silver because it's all covered with braces. And I looked at her and I thought, that's what I looked like when I was 13 years old. Blonde, big eyes, mouthful of braces, excited about the world. And that was also the year I put down a paintbrush, I put down a pencil, and never picked one up again for 35 years. Why? Because I had an art teacher who told me I had no talent. Now, I don't remember Miss Zebra exactly saying that. Of course, like I remember Mrs. Harsh, I'll never forget Miss Zebra. I don't remember her saying it exactly. But what happened that day in art class? We're supposed to paint a historical picture. I picked the landing of Columbus on the shores of America. There he was, getting off the boat, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria off. And it was, Intempera paints the best I could do. My friend at the next table, she painted a picture of the Titanic. And it could have been a poster for the White Star Line. Miss Zebra walked around the room, and I don't remember what she said. Did she praise Anne and not me? Did she enthuse about Anne and not me? Did she literally look at me and say, "You're not as good as Anne"? Or what is that thing supposed to be? What did she say? I don't remember. But I had the idea that I had no talent in art, and I put down a pen for good. That ever happened to any of you? Something like that? Yeah, it happens. Okay, so years and years and years go by, and I have a friend who's an art director at an advertising agency, and I watched Mike draw. Oh, he could draw, and it was wonderful. Now, he could draw, and he could draw more representationally. Some kids can learn to do that. Mike did it. I couldn't do it. Mike said to me, "You know, you can draw, Lisa. You can't draw because you can't see." And he drew a line on a piece of paper. He said, "Copy my line." I copied his line. He said, "See, you can draw because you can see. You saw what I did. You copied what I did. I want you to buy this book." So I bought that book, and I don't know, has anybody seen this book? Do any of you have this book? Few of you, good. Very wonderful, excellent book. I would still highly recommend it, and it's going to teach you how to see, and it'll make you learn to draw. So the thing they give you first in this book is this exercise. You're supposed to copy this Pablo Picasso picture of Igor Stravinsky. And I thought, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do a face. I can't do hands. That man's legs are crossed. How am I supposed to do this? Noses look like triangles, eyes look like circles, heads are squares, and ears stick out. I can't do this. And so what the author of this book suggests that you do is that you turn the picture upside down, because it breaks your mind from thinking noses are triangles and eyes are circles and ears stick out like big ears off the side of someone's head. Just copy the lines. Take your time. Go slowly. And so I did. I copied it upside down as best I could. And when I turned it right side up, I thought, oh my God, I can draw. Because I can see. Now, is it perfect? Does it look like Picasso? It certainly doesn't. But, you know, his head's a little weird. But his hands are interlaced. His legs are crossed. He's sitting in a chair and looks like a real person. And so from that moment on, I decided I could draw. But only because I can see. And this is the fundamental lesson of the artist, as every artist in here already knows. You have to be able to observe, and the power of observation, it applies to every single one of our areas of study, every one of our crafts. The math professor who needs a student to understand where a mistake in a proof is. The geology professor or teacher who is looking at trying to get kids to identify the difference between certain kinds of wildflowers. The medical doctor who observes what's going on your face or in your eyes, the color of your skin. That's why old Chinese doctors were supposedly magicians. They had powers of observations our doctors don't have anymore because they sit at computers and look at blood tests. That observation applies everywhere. So I'm going to talk about observation and a few of the other benefits of art. And as I do, what I really hope you'll do as I'm talking is write down any way that what I'm talking about can be applied to the way you teach what you teach. From the littlest ones to the biggest ones, observation is such a fundamental skill, it applies everywhere. Now, there's a quote from John Ruskin, if you know anything about the early arts and crafts movement in England in the early 1800s. John Ruskin was an artist. He was an architect. He was a social commentator. He's one of my big heroes. And he said, I believe that the sight is more important than the drawing. I would rather teach drawing that my pupils may learn to love nature than teach the looking at nature that they may learn to draw. So use your eyes in this world and observe the fine, fine details, and then just pick up your pen and copy what you see. So the artist eye does these three things for all of our students. If you can approach the world with that perspective, you will sharpen your observation, and your students will grow into great detectives, fabulous doctors, marvelous psychologists, botanic artists, mathematicians, all kinds of things. It develops patience, because to do this well, you have to take your time. I have a little next door neighbor. During COVID, she came over to visit me every week, and we would draw. I gave her the Picasso exercise. She was done in 3 minutes, because for children, it's got to be fast. They've got to be fast. And she turned it over. It was a mess. I said, Orly, turn it back over, and now take 5 minutes to do just the bottom, 5 more minutes to do the middle, 5 more minutes to do the top. And when she turned it over, it looked fabulous. It develops patience. And finally, it motivates improvement in a way that is a very self-generating improvement. Many of you have talked about the difficulty children have when they run into a problem, they can't solve it right away, they give up. Resilience tends to be a really difficult problem. And if you critique art exercises in the right way, the motivation to improve and try to do better will just go on and on and on. So that artist's eye is something that we can all benefit from in a lot of interesting ways. So Orly, I'm going to tell a little story about her in observation. Orly is a 13-year-old girl, daughter of her only child. Mother and father live next door. And because of COVID, everything was shut down, and her parents didn't let her out much. She did let Orly come over to our house every week, and we would draw and we would cook. So I said to Orly one day, let's make a gift for your dad. We're going to bake him a cake. But it has to be a cake. You can't ask him any questions about what kind of cake he wants. You have to figure out the home run hit cake that will just have him dissolve in tears of delight by not asking a single question, but by observing, only observing. And then we'll make the cake. So the first week she came in, she said, well, it's got to be chocolate. I said, well, Orly, that doesn't help much, because there are about 10,000 different kinds of chocolate cakes we could make. But he likes chocolate. You see that that's something you do. Next week she comes, she says, well, it can't be a chocolate cheesecake, because we had one of those cheesecakes with all the different flavors, and there was a chocolate one there, and he didn't take it. He took the strawberry one, okay? And I offered him a taste of my chocolate brownie at the restaurant the other night, and he didn't want to try it. So it can't be a cheesecake, and it can't be heavy. Okay, that'll cut us down to another 5,000 cakes. The next week she came in and she said to me, I've got it. We were at a party, and they had a chocolate mousse cake, layers, and then that fluffy stuff in between. And he had a really big piece, and I had a piece too. And then I had to go to the bathroom. And when I said to him, Dad, will you hold my cake while I'm in the bathroom? And when I came out of the bathroom, he'd eaten it. I said, okay, Orly, we're going to make your dad a chocolate mousse cake. And we did. And she said, I want to decorate it with raspberries, because I like raspberries. And I want him to have something that I like too. Fine, we make her cake. She takes it home. And of course, on any day when I need a lot of encouragement against being discouraged and despaired, all I have to do is take out the videotape of Orly's mom showing her dad getting that cake. And what a beautiful moment that was. Just absolutely overjoyed. His daughter gave him something that he didn't ask for and that he loved. And she said, Dad, it's a chocolate mousse cake just like you love. And it's raspberries, which I love. It's our cake. That comes from the artist's eye, all the power of observation. Now, I'm going to spend most of my time on this subject, but the artist eye does a lot of other things for you. It helps your students with interpretive imagination. It changes, as I said, the reactions to expectations and mistakes. It will foster a spirit of contribution, again, instead of competition among your students. It'll help them become T-shaped, as I'll explain what that means a little bit later. And it will build connection and community. If you are an artist, you are never lonely. And I'm not an official artist, but I belong to a group of people online I've never met, all my watercolor friends who are all wishing us well today. They all know I'm here. They have all contributed art that I will show you soon, all of us dead rank amateurs, complete beginners, just trying to apply this to increase the joy of our lives. So it starts with observation. We are not such hot observers. And this is an exercise. You can make one up of your own. Try one like this with your kids. But do you know whether the top stripe on the flag is red or white? Fast. Well, very good. It is. It absolutely is red. Do you know which hand the Statue of Liberty is holding the torch in? Very good. Do you know how many sides a stop sign has? Very good. Do you know whose picture is on a $10 bill? It's Alexander Hamilton. Do you know how many sides are on a standard pencil? Very good. Do you know whether a book's even numbered pages are on the left or the right? Well, I'll let you look that one up. I won't tell you the answer to that one. Now here, do you know what color your best friend's eyes are? Do you know what color your granddaughter's eyes are? Well, yeah, sure, they're blue, they're green, they're brown, but what kind of brown? Are they soft brown with yellow flecks and a black rim around the edge? You look at those eyes all the time. Do you ever see them? Probably not. Could we all get better at this? Probably yes. If you ask my mother what color are Lisa's eyes, she'd say green, I guess. And they are. They're green. My sister's eyes are green too, but her eyes are olive green, and my eyes are more blue-green. Do you pay attention? You need to pay attention. So getting your kids to be better observers, there's so many exercises that you can do. You probably are familiar with the ones where you take something out of a room or you put something in there that wasn't there 20 minutes before and they have to find out what it is. Well, there's just hundreds of those sorts of things. You could have a look at some of Bev Doolittle's work. With little ones, you can do this. How many horses are there? And where are they? So you look and well, there's actually 5. So she's done a number of these Pinto paintings, but it will sharpen them up, and this is great fun for kids to do. If you're a little bit older, because you can figure that out, 5 horses in just a minute, all right? If you're a little bit older, take one of the April Fool's paintings of Norman Rockwell. How many things can you find wrong? Now, you see some wrong things, right? You see that the little girl, you see the Norman Rockwell signature at the bottom is upside down and backwards. You see that her shoes don't match. You see that the 2 dolls have the heads of the old man. You see that her socks don't match, that her purse is a book. There are 56 things wrong in that painting. How many of them could you find? And if you looked again, and if you looked again, and if you looked again, could you find more? That power to observe sensitizes you to the world around you. Well, I have a young friend who's a Roman Catholic priest in a community of religious men. And so younger men seek to join a community where men will live together and they will serve together. And this building a community is a very important thing. And so the young guys come in, and young Father Nathan says to me, what I do is I watch really carefully. Do they notice there's paper on the floor and pick it up? Do they notice that old 95-year-old Father Al needs a little help with his getting up from the table? Do they notice what's going on? If they don't, we're going to have big formation problems with these guys because they're not observant of the world around them. So all of the things, can you think of something where in your field of work, at whatever level you teach, in whatever subject you teach, where observation could help you? So if you can, write one down because I'll ask for them a little bit later. That sense of being able to observe also makes us more articulate. So here's an exercise that you can try. This is René Magritte's Time Transformed. You get a student at a table and you say to the other kids, you're going to draw what she describes. And what does she describe? There's a train coming out of a fireplace. Well, if I had to draw a train coming out of the fireplace, I wouldn't put it up in the air, I'd put it on the ground. And if it's a train coming out of the fireplace, I might put the whole train in, not just the car. And I might not put the smoke coming out. I might put the fireplace facing forward, not along a side wall. I might tell them that they're candlesticks, but there aren't candles in those candlesticks. So it'll force articulation, more description. The better articulate you are, well, that's so much of what Bruce just talked to us about. How articulate and descriptive can you be? Art will help you do that. And then when you can describe, you're a better scientist. You're a better mathematician. You're a better philosopher. You're a better historian. You're a better everything. So the one thing that is very encouraging about art is that if you just do it, you will get better. Automatically. You can't help it. So I'll show you a little bit of my own art. So I, did Pablo Picasso, and I didn't do much drawing after that. I'm a full-time professor at a university. I've got 1,000,001 things to do. But about 15 years ago, Alan and I went to Oberammergau to see the Passion Play, which is performed there every 10 years since the 1300s, because in thanksgiving to God for having saved Oberammergauians from the plague. Okay, so we traveled through southern Germany. Well, Father Joe and I were friends, of course, by then. He was 80 years old. It was before he got sick. And I wanted to make a little souvenir for Father Joe. So what I decided to do was I was going to draw a church every single day as we went through southern Germany and into Oberammergau. So the very first day, we were in Berlin. And this is St. Hedwig. This is the Roman Catholic cathedral. And that's my drawing on June the 15th. Now, this isn't much, right? This isn't much. It kind of sort of looks like a church, but not really. All right, so I drew again the next day. And here's the next church 2 days later. And you can see it's a little better. I mean, the tower looks a little rounded. There looks like a little interior in the windows. There looks like a little more shape and three-dimensionality. Let's see. 3 days later was the steeple of the Church of the Holy Ghost. 3 days after that was St. Leodegar's in Lucerne. We got to Oberammergau, and there's a marvelous cliff in Oberammergau that looks like a cathedral itself. And so I drew the cliff on June the 25th. And then on the 26th, the next day, there was a lovely little Lutheran church with the most sweet lady pastor in her long cassock welcoming people into the church. And there's the Lutheran church in Oberammergau. So we're looking at work of 11 days. You can't help but get better. Just like you can't help but get stronger if you work a muscle. You can't help but get more flexible if you touch your toes every day. Art works the same way, except we don't think so. You have to be talented. You have to be professional. You have to know what you're doing and be skilled. No, you don't. You just have to do it. And do it every day. So this will just show you the progress in 11 days. All right. So what I would suggest, and Bruce suggested something very close to this, writing every day, draw every day. Draw every day. You can draw anything. All you have to have is draw your finger. I would suggest you do this every day. John Ruskin said if you can draw a stone, you can draw anything. So you don't have to do anything fancy. If your kids pick up something in the playground, in the backyard, a leaf, a twig, a flower bud, a seed pod, anything, and they draw it, and they draw the same thing every day, every day, every day. So this is the seeing drawing method of Kateri Ewing, who is my teacher online. Never met the woman, but a marvelous teacher to show you how to see and draw, and the work of Julie Betts. What Julie does is she's drawn that shell 100 times, and she keeps drawing and drawing, observing more and more and more and more closely. Here's the work of Catherine Shadweiler, and Catherine is also a person who just picks up whatever it is that happens to be lying around, and she draws it by paying close attention. You can do it, I can do it, you will absolutely get better each and every time you try. Observing the details of things is important, but interpreting what you see is also important, and art will help your students learn how to do that. So it's the bit of the psychological art. We're going to go from observing to understanding. And here's a painting by George Latour, and you look at this painting for a minute. Where are your eyes drawn? Up at the faces of those people. The man in the fabulous outfit looking sort of suspiciously at the lady far at the right. You see the woman in the center with the headdress, her eyes shifted over toward him. Who is she? Are they together? Are they not together? Who are those other two women on the side? They too, and the lady on the right, they look like they don't come from the same culture as they do. Now, if you were a policeman coming on this group of people, what would you do? You would say, arrest those women. And why? Yeah, they're stealing. Can you see down at the bottom? The lady with the headdress, the white headdress, she's cutting the golden chain off the man's. You can see it down there? And you can see the woman on the it's your far right. She is taking something out of the pocket of the man. They're stealing. It's called the fortune teller, and of course this is what is going on. That woman in the fortune teller has marked him as a mark, distracted his attention, and her confederates have robbed him blind. So you can learn to go from observing to understanding. It's a fabulous story taking place on one piece of paper. We invent as we look and as we see, and fostering that inventive creativity is something very easy to do and very important to do. When I was a kid, they gave you Rorschach tests as a part of an intelligence exam. I don't know, did any of you ever have those ink blot tests? And you had to imagine what pictures were in them, and depending on how the therapist scored it, you got various components in your intelligence. Well, this is Andy Warhol's work. It's called Rorschach, and what do you see? Asking your students to project into something, interpret into something, will foster their creativity and their imagination. You can play around with this in an art session very well. This is the work of my teacher, Kateri Ewing, and what she did was show us in a demonstration she just laid color on a piece of paper. She had no idea that she was going to draw a deer. She put down olive green, she put down spring green, she dropped water and sprinkled salt on a piece of paper. She let it dry and then looked at it and said, "What do I see?" Well, she's quite amazing. What she saw was a deer. And so she took a pen and ink and she drew in the face and the ears and let the sprinkled salt be his antlers. Now, she's a masterful work at this, but Susanna Steffel does the same thing. So Susanna tried this herself, and she just did these swirly blue things on a piece of paper with her watercolor paints. And then she said, "What is it? What do I see?" And of course, I think it's charming. She saw a dirt bike with its handles and a sun shining in the sky. Anybody can do this. What do you see? What do you see? Doesn't have to be as gorgeous as an art teacher's. It can be something just as imaginative. Here's some more work from Susanna. She just put a bunch of different colors down on a piece of paper, and then she thought she saw a face, she thought she saw a cat, and that's what she drew in. And Karen Wilson did the same thing, put down color, and then said, "What do I see?" And she drew shapes and images around it and created a picture. So there's no right or wrong. All there is imagination. What do you see? So of course, art can also foster some wonderful creativity. You may do these kinds of things already, taking simple images and asking a child to write a story or to tell you, what is she thinking? Where has she been? What will she do? Is she happy? Is she sad? What is her life like? And you take an image of art on either a young girl or young boy, and you let your students invent. Older kids, of course, this one is a very common one, to use Andrew Wyeth's Christina's World. What is happening in this picture? Is she lost? Is she afraid? Is she injured? Did she just wake up from a nap? Is she lonely? And how can our creativity be fueled in a written sort of a sense from a painting like this? For an even older kid, this one I always like. It's Edward Layton's "Till Death Do Us Part." You think, now what is going on in this picture? Now there are a lot of clues you have to be observant of. Is that man her husband or her father? Well, it's her husband, because your father walks you down the aisle. Your husband walks you back. And how do you know you're walking back from the aisle? It's because the sanctuary is behind you, and there are rose petals on the floor. And a woman wears her veil over her face before she gets married. Her veil is behind her face now. This is her husband. So, what would you think is the story here? Could you write it from her point of view? Write it from his point of view? Write it from the man who is standing on the left and looking at her. Who is he? The man she wanted to marry, but didn't because he didn't have any money? Maybe. Who are those people there? Well, you can't hardly see them. They're far in the back. But two people gossiping. What are they saying? You could write a whole variety of stories just from that one image. And it's a very creative thing to do. The imagination is always prompting us to ask, what if? What if? So what if? Here's Susan Hushin, and Susan said, what if I just pick up a twig and use it as a paintbrush? What if? Not, that's not art, it's no good, I can't do it, no real artist does this. She just said, what if? And Rebecca said, I want to draw, I want to do something that looks like one of those Hubble Space Telescope photographs. What if I just put some red down, I just put some black down, I just put some blue down, and then I can use a pen when it dries and draw in the stars, and I have a galaxy out in outer space. We compare ourselves very hard to our expectations and to the work of other people. And art taught in the right way, in a good way, will help every one of us, children included, see what we produce in art as a kind of a happy accident sometimes. And how often do happy accidents produce extraordinary food out of the kitchen? Happy accidents produce incredible insights in chemistry, discoveries in medicine and biology, if we can see them as happy accidents instead of things that are right or they are wrong. So here is Agnes did this little exercise on poppies, and she posted it on the community site, and she said to us all, I did these poppies, but I really blew it. I just wasn't happy with what I was doing, so I took a spray bottle of water and I sprayed the bottom, and then the paint ran, and I guess I'm going to do it over. And people wrote back to her and said, Agnes, it's gorgeous. It's actually that smear of water that makes it look more organic and like a real thing. Don't throw it away. And this is one of the things, of course, my husband does, which is just great, is whenever I paint anything, he won't let me throw it away for 3 days. Just put it away. You can't throw it away, because in that period of time, your expectations let go. And sometimes it's almost like I painted something, I put it away, and fairies came in the night and made it beautiful. But it's letting go of my expectations and not saying it's right or saying it's wrong. Here's one Sharon Routledge did. She did this pencil thing that was meant to look very like a 1950s sort of, I don't know what you call that kind of design. And she was doing it with colored pencils, and she needed to sharpen her pencil, and the shavings fell on the paper, and she brushed them away, and they left a mark. And she thought, you know what, I kind of like that. I'm going to take the rest of my pencils and sharpen them and blow and spread them along. And I think, well, I like that. It's just terrific. Art helps you to appreciate the happy accident so that everything doesn't have to be right or wrong all the time. It can be interesting or better. So I have another example here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about something I'm working on. So I have a very good friend. Her name is Katie. She's a writer. Amateur writer. She tutors a little girl. That's Avery in Tutor Chicago program. Avery's now just 9, and Katie's been tutoring her for a year and a half. She's very far behind in reading. She's not motivated at all, and any sentence with a comma intimidates her. If she reads, she doesn't like fiction. She only will read nonfiction. She likes things like, Japan, the Incas, Antarctica. She doesn't like any fiction. So Katie has decided that what she's going to do is she is going to try to write a story about Avery, that's fiction, with sentences with commas, and inspire this little girl to read. So she tells me about this project. And I said to her, well, Katie, if you write it, I'll illustrate it. Now, why I said that, I have no idea. Because I have been painting exactly 6 months. So I said, okay. And Katie wanted a portrait of Avery on the cover of the book. So I said, all right. And I painted a portrait of Avery. Now, you look at that and you think, okay, isn't that sweet? Lisa doesn't know how to paint. It doesn't really look like Avery. But I looked at it, and because I don't say, I can't do this, I'm no good at art, I can't paint faces, I said, what's wrong with this? You try to go and help your students go from I can't to what does it need? So I thought, okay, it didn't look like a child. Well, that means I don't understand the anatomy of a child's face as very well. I mean, maybe Avery will look like this when she's 25, but she doesn't look like this now. So I go to a bunch of YouTube videos. I look at how children's faces are structured. I get a good sense of it. And I realize, my gosh, her forehead's too small. Her eyes are too wide. Her cheeks aren't fat enough. And I tried it again. Now, it's better, don't you think? It's better. It's better. Now, I'm not a super realist painter, but goodness gracious, I try to observe, I try to paint, and get it as good as I can. So this is one of the things too, that it changes your motivation from it's no good, I can't do it, to let me try again. Let me see what I could do better. What does it need? And this, of course, has huge implications for how it is you critique art, and in fact, anything with kids. Our temptation is just to say, wow, that's great, that's beautiful, or I don't know. The first thing I ever painted in watercolor, I wanted to paint a pear from the fall, you know, the kind that are a bit slender and they're brownish, reddish color, not the yellow-green. I painted it and showed it to Alan, and he said, "What made you decide to paint a potato?" And it, you know, it looked like a potato. But you don't want to say that to a little kid. I just, you know, we've been married a long time, and I just laugh and laugh and laugh, and I painted it again. But to say, gosh, what is that supposed to be now? Instead of say, that's a beautiful pink background, and I love the way you've got her hair coming up. And there's her little dog, Louie, and he looks really cute. I bet he's a Scottish Terrier. You talk about what is there as a way of encouraging and helping kids understand how to make it better, rather than simply praise it or criticize it. That's great. Well, maybe you're not so good in art. So people in art, of course, we think about competition differently. We don't compete with each other, and we don't steal from each other unless we're literally forgers. So here is a way in which art inspires art, and art that you do can inspire the kids as well. So here's the Great Wave off Kanagawa, Hokusai, 1831, very, very famous ukiyo-e painting. And at the exhibition in, I guess it was probably in London or Paris, probably Paris, Vincent van Gogh saw it. And then he painted this. So you see the inspiration. And then, of course, Vincent van Gogh painted this cafe in Paris in 1888. And someone named Edward Hopper saw that one. And this is what he painted. Hangs in the Art Institute of Chicago now. So this is an exercise you can do as well. If a kid draws something, paints something, take that, give it to another child, and say, draw it again. Draw something that strikes you about this, and now make something of your own. Let people inspire one another rather than compete with each other. Ultimately, what art does is produces in all of us these, what I call a T-shaped person. Someone who is very broadly experienced, but very deeply, powerfully knowledgeable. So this is one way of talking about well-rounded people, but T-shaped people. Christ was a T-shaped person. The incarnate God knows the intimacy and mysteries of the Holy Trinity, but he knew enough about carpentry to talk about houses built on sand versus rocks, and enough about farming to talk about how to teach his lessons in terms of seeds that are sown on rocky ground or seeds that are sown in good ground. To know about other things, and art is something that helps you to know about other things, making you a T-shaped person who can draw metaphorically. So you can be like Isaiah if you're a potter and talk about the act of God on our lives, the way a potter manipulates clay. This sort of experience gives people a sense of breadth. So I'm going to finish up and tell you a little bit more about this project for my Avery. So there's Avery, the book is done. There's Katie, the lady who wrote it. Now, this is really quite a story, not of art at all, but of what art is really for, a gift of love. So this is a story of Katie's love for her little student. It's a story of my love for Katie, my friend, wanting to help her with this student. So, of course, I did a lot of paintings. This is a story of Avery and Louie, her magic dog. So Louie is a Scottish Terrier Avery actually owns. Then in their sleep at night, Louie takes Avery traveling. They go to Japan, where they see the temples and they see the festivals, and they go to Costa Rica, where Louie encounters a poison yellow frog and he sees a sloth, and they go to Antarctica, where Louie takes a ride on a penguin. And as I was painting these things, I would post them on my watercolor site to the other people in my community, and they would say, I love this. I love the way you've got Louis on the penguin's back. And they would point things out to me. And of course, they loved it so much that they wanted to know how it all ended. And one day, I got in the mail a package from one of the other watercolorists, a woman who I've never met, and was Susanna Steffel. She said, I was in Michael's, the hobby shop, and I walked by a display, and I thought of your art, and I thought of Avery, and I thought of that painting you did of the sloth. And there's this little bag here that has a sloth on it, and I bought it for Avery. And I bought the tree frog stickers. So I'm mailing these to you, and throw it into the gift box for Avery. So here's Avery, who's got a gift from her teacher, from a woman who painted, who's never met her, but adores her just the same, and a community of artists who really want to see this fostered and a little girl made happy. It's art that becomes a gift again, not something that has to hang on the walls or be reviewed in an art journal, but something that brings joy to the lives of people. So I'm going to leave you my last one here. This is my inspiration. This is Betty Pipenrick. Betty is a hospice patient I watch over, and she has been an artist all her life, and she's painted and painted, except now she can't see anymore, but it doesn't stop her from painting. So the painting she's got there is one she did several years ago before macular degeneration has continued to destroy her eyes. But now for Valentine's Day, what I got was a postcard with red blobs on a green background, and I love it just the same. You can paint, even if you can't see. So people like that are my inspiration and my joy. So I'm going to leave you with a couple recommendations for books. These books are ones that my teacher has done. Look Closer, Draw Better. These are excellent, easy, simple books. Anybody can do this. Watercolors for everyone, drawing is for everyone. Kateri Ewing has lots of YouTube videos. You can do that. I joined her Patreon site, so that's why all of these other watercolorists and I talk to each other. But this is, that's a wonderful resource just to get started. And then here are some other books that you can use. Visual Intelligence by Amy Herman, John Ruskin's Elements of Drawing, written in 1857, so you have to be prepared for something very old in that one, and drawing on the right side of the brain. So I hope you'll pick up a pen. I hope you'll draw your hand. I hope you'll draw a rock you pick up in the garden, a leaf you pick from the sidewalk, and you'll do it again and again. So before I thank you, I've got 2 minutes left, and I want to see, did anybody think of anything in your own work where you could apply the techniques of observation to something that you're already teaching? Anybody got an example? Yes, ma'am.
Definitely in science, teaching anatomy,
Anatomy, physiology, oh my goodness, of course. How closely can you look? And then to have to draw that as a way of reinforcing what you've seen, it's a fabulous way to teach it. Yeah. Anybody else got an example? Yeah.
sign language.
Sign language. So tell us more about that.
Well, so students seeing how the hand shapes are formed, even expressions, because that's part of the grammar and it's part of the emotion and tone. So it's observation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sign language, lip reading, very interesting thing to do. You know, of course, lip readers these days are watching celebrities everywhere they go and interpreting it. But yes, sign language, absolutely, absolutely. Any other one that anyone has? Yeah.
So I'm a PA actually, and so I have to use a lot of facial nonverbal communication because my patients to know what's actually going on.
What's actually going on, right.
More so than verbal, I think.
Yes, and so putting together exercises of all kinds of facial expressions. What do you see? What do you mean? What does it interpret? Yeah.
It's very clear that you teach, when you look at a piece of art, you do a great job at teaching beauty as being an active experience, but one has to go out and seek it. It's not just simply looking at the broader picture. And there are so many parallels between that and what I do with my students in the music classroom, where you're listening to a piece of music. You know, you're not just sitting there and ingesting it. You have to look at the details to try to infer what the author is communicating or what is otherwise going on.
Exactly. And so, one of the parallels, it's interesting, between music and art, it seems to happen that even though we aren't professional musicians, maybe many of us, I'm not a professional musician, but I sing in church every Sunday. So at least I sing. I sing in the car, I sing while I'm cooking, you can do it. But drawing leaves us, doesn't it? Because there's a point at which we're either good at it or bad at it. We get introduced to professional artists. We look at what's in museums. We think, I'll never do that. And real artists make a living at it, but you can be a master of art without it at all. So be a beginner, and you'll bring a lot of joy to people and a lot of inspiration to your students. So thank you all very much, and I will thank you very much.